All right, and welcome to the forecast card. Pretty shitty day of college basketball. We end up going 2-2 and one donation of juice, as always. Ended up a little bit because I did have Michigan at a higher unit, as it was the lock of the day. But yeah, man, William and Mary, the game was tied with like 5 minutes left. I think they were winning by like nine, but one quarter through the second half, and they just kind of imploded. Their shots stopped falling. They end up losing that game by nine. Florida State, they, they honestly didn't even play that poorly. Like obviously, you look at the final score and you think that like this was always UNC's game, but for the first half, it was kind of back and forth. UNC was only up six at half. Man, UNC shot way too well. It was pretty much just Watkins who played well on Florida State. They just got completely dominated on the boards. I think it was 41-24. UNC got 11 offensive boards. I honestly thought FSU was a bigger team. They'd be able to handle it, but shooting wise, they actually played fine. They shot 50% from three. They shot 54% from the field, just slightly worse than UNC, who shot 55% from the field. They shot well from the free throw line, but yeah, those rebounds screwed the hell out of them. That was basically the complete difference of this game, giving UNC 8 additional field goal attempts strictly off of the extra offensive glass. So, yeah, it is what it is. The Coles, back and forth. They finally locked back in near the end of the game. Hopefully, some of you also got this -1.5 line because I know it had moved overnight. But yeah, the other team, I can't remember who they played, shot a three at the buzzer, and this game only won by two. So pretty cancer when that happens, but it is what it is. Michigan game, I'm not sure if it was an offensive game, like offensive couldn't shoot, or the defenses were just locked in, but that was a pathetic game. If you told me that Michigan only scored 49 points and they won outright, I wouldn't believe you. But yeah, they ended up winning that game by three. Colorado, so literally I usually make my bets almost immediately after the video uploads, and by then the line had already moved to +7, so I got it at +7. So anyone that would have gotten the video would have also gotten at +7. So fortunately, that game pushes. Another home team implosion in the final minutes, basically just like the William and Mary game. Yeah, Colorado just kept trying to shoot threes to come back in the game, missing fouling, and it's usually how underdogs end up losing. So that game sucked. I really thought we were going to cover. It felt like the sharp side. Fortunately, all the boring square betters on Kansas won by 6.5. So it is what it is. But anyway, let's get into the 5 games that I like for tomorrow. All right, heading on to game number 1, we have Georgia Tech heading on the road to play Pittsburgh. Now, on paper, obviously Pitt is the much better team. They played a much harder schedule. They've been basically a top 35, top 40 team all year. Meanwhile, GT is not even a top 100 team, at least by my model. GT has been playing pretty decently as of lately, but man, Pittsburgh at home is just another beast, man. If you look at them just in terms of matchups, Pittsburgh's going to have a lot of success, probably from deep. They're going to get a lot of points out of steals. I think they're going to be able to run away with this game because their stats at home are just so well, especially from three. GT, on the other hand, defensively, Pittsburgh is a pretty solid defensive team. They don't give up many turnovers. They don't allow you to get many offensive boards. GT doesn't really shoot anything specifically. They shoot everything around 30%. The only thing that they're going to have some advantage on that Pittsburgh doesn't defend well is the three, but it's a shot that GT takes the lesser of proportionally. And again, taking threes on the road, typically not a good measure for success if that's going to be your best way to score. So on paper, really like Pitt offensively. Now, if you look a bit more into the matchup of these two teams, obviously Pitt has not been an incredible team, especially covering 3-4 possession games. But this just feels like a great spot. At home, Pitt is 8-6 against the spread. On the road, GT is 3-5 against the spread. And these two games, we're getting Pittsburgh off of a tough loss to Notre Dame on the road. Now they're coming home with 2 days rest. Georgia Tech came off an extremely pathetic loss to a much worse Boston College team on the road. Yes, they've been playing better as of lately. Most impressively, their wins over Clemson and Louisville. But since then, like they just lost to Virginia. They barely beat a Stanford team at home. They barely beat California at home. And then they lost to Boston College on the road. Part of me thinks that Clemson and Louisville game was the other teams just playing poorly. I still am not sold on this GT team. I think Pitt is just the more balanced team. And even though they haven't really been playing that well lately, we're getting Pittsburgh at home, getting Georgia Tech on the second game of a really tough road loss. Pitt still has arguably the best college home advantage in college basketball, at least in the conference. They've been a top 25 team when playing at home and a borderline top 100 on the road. Meanwhile, Georgia Tech, they play significantly worse on the road. If you look at their last 5, they've fallen outside the top 100. And obviously, Pittsburgh has been playing nearly up to their standards lately. They barely beat Syracuse, Miami. They got crushed by SMU, lost to North Carolina, lost to Virginia, lost to Wake, barely beat North Carolina at home, beat Syracuse, lost to Clemson. They haven't really played that well lately. They played much better early on in the year. But again, I think they're due here for a good win. I think Georgia Tech's been playing a bit over their head, and they're kind of due for regression. Meanwhile, Pittsburgh's been playing poorly. I think they're both going in opposite directions here. I think Pitt is just going to be the better team at home, with Georgia Tech 500 miles away from home, where they've lost their last 4. So give me Pitt at home. I don't absolutely love this number. I have them winning this game by 10, so it's a little tight at -8, but I do think Pitt shows up here at home. This is going to be almost their last home game of the year. They've won more against Boston College, but they don't play again until March 1st against Louisville, which I don't think is going to be too much of a look-ahead spot just because of how far out in the future it is. Same with Georgia Tech. So this is their last game on the road trip. I think they're just looking forward to go home, especially near the end of the season where they're likely not making it very far in the tournament. So give me Pitt -8. All right, game number 2. We have Buffalo heading on the road to play Central Michigan. Now, this, in my book, is the epitome of a massive get-right spot and revenge game. Central Michigan, on paper, is the much, much better team than Buffalo is. The last time these two teams played, Buffalo actually ended up winning that game outright, which was, I'm sure, a shock for a lot of people. This just feels like a Central Michigan team that's going to be pissed off. They have a decent home advantage, top 150 in college basketball. They do play better at home than they do on the road. Buffalo technically does play a little bit better on the road as well. This just seems like an awesome spot here for Central Michigan. They just came off a decent win against Western Michigan on the road after 3 losses. They kind of ride this momentum. Buffalo just got blown out 3 games in a row, 2 at home, and now they're on their second game of the road trip. When they did play earlier in late January, Buffalo actually beat them by 6, but that was obviously an extremely fluky game where Central Michigan only put up 69 points. In their last 5 games, they put up 85. So I think in the revenge spot at home, I think they can usually win this game by 20 points. Obviously, it's a huge number, but I do typically like to read into the books a little bit. And the fact that we're getting a team that just lost to another team outright at basically a -15 number, -14.5, it just feels like the books are telling us that this is going to be a super blowout game. This Buffalo team has lost to Bowling Green and Temple by the same number when traveling this distance. On paper, you don't really have to go into it. Buffalo is just a terrible team. I have this modeled as an 18-point win for Central Michigan. They played a much harder schedule. They're the better team. Buffalo does play really fast, which typically leads to a lot of turnovers. Central Michigan is a top 30 team in offensive glass. Buffalo is not even ranked in the top 350. Central Michigan is ranked in top 75 in points off steals. Buffalo is the 356th worst team at turning the ball over. I think Central Michigan is going to completely dominate this team. And Buffalo playing at that speed for how bad they are is just going to lead to so many turnovers. So I think this environment for Central Michigan is going to be a complete blowout spot here. Give me Central Michigan to win this game by 20 or more. All right, heading on to the third game, we have James Madison head on the road to play ULM. This is a disgusting game. I fully understand if you want to fade this one. But this James Madison team is not nearly the same team on the road, and they have not been covering on the road nearly at all. If you look at their most recent games on the road, they went on the road, beat Coastal Carolina by 1, didn't cover. They beat Georgia Southern by 5, didn't cover. They played Toledo, lost by 3. They played Georgia State, only won by 7, didn't cover. They fought against Old Dominion, they won by 14. Not sure if they covered. That was probably really close. Lost to App State outright, lost to Marshall outright, lost to South Alabama, lost to Wake Forest, lost to Towson, lost to Norfolk. Like, this team has almost all of their wins come at home. Now, ULM, obviously they're not a great team either, but most of their teams come when they're at home. They have 2 wins, obviously, over some dogshit unranked teams, non-D1 teams. They beat Northwestern State, they beat Arkansas Pine Bluff, South Alabama twice, one of them at home, and Southern Miss at home. But again, like they have been covering these numbers at home. They lost to Texas State by 12. They just barely covered that game. Obviously, they just beat Southern Miss. They've only lost to App State by 8, a team that beat James Madison twice. They only lost to Louisiana by 5. They did get blown up by Troy, but that's they have very rare losses at home. Old Dominion, they lost by 5. Houston Christian, they lost by 6. They beat Arkansas Pine Bluff. UT Arlington, they lost by 14. SFA by 8. I just don't think this James Madison really is that great. I think ULM might find some success here. This is a really awkward travel spot where James Madison's traveling over 800 miles to play this game. ULM is going to be staying at home or coming off of a rough road trip on the road. Yeah, I don't know what to say. This is the last 2 home games for ULM. I think they're going to show up. On the other side, James Madison, probably just looking forward to finishing the season off on the road. Their last 2 games are on the road. I think Texas State, a team that's kind of competing with them in the Sun Belt. That's arguably a look-ahead spot in the 28th. So give me ULM. I think they lose this game by like 9 points. All right, and that brings us to our lock, or my favorite game of the day. I really don't fully believe in this Iowa team. I think their defense is just too shitty. And a lot of people are sold on Illinois being a dog shit team all of a sudden, but I don't buy it, especially when they're getting to play at home here. Illinois, they're a team that's going to find a lot of success in the paint, mid-range shots. They're going to dominate you on the offensive glass. They're not a fantastic three-point shooting team, but they do take a decent amount of threes, which is typically a problem if you're not a team that's going to dominate the boards. But Iowa, they're not a very big team. They're ranked 330th in defending their own glass. I think that's going to be a problem. On the other side, this Utah team, they rely heavily on getting points off steals. Illinois does turn the ball over a little bit, but not nearly as much as other teams do. They're a very good defense in the paint, really good mid-range defense. Iowa may find a little bit of success from 3. They're a good three-point shooting team, but again, on the road, it's tough to rely on this Illinois team that's going to be really hungry here in the Big Ten. And again, Illinois won't get any free throws, so I don't know. I think Iowa's going to have to keep up offensively. Obviously, they're an incredible offense, but Illinois' defense is miles above Iowa's. I just think Illinois has been the better team. If you look at the matchup, at least when it comes to how these two teams have been performing at home, Illinois plays just about as good as they should be. They're a pretty solid team, top 20 team at home. Iowa, they fall outside the top 100 on the road. They have been significantly worse on the road. If you look at their last 5, these teams do look very comparable. But this Illinois team, when having to play teams kind of like Iowa, they play really, really well. They've really only struggled most of this year against these top 25 teams. And on the other side, Iowa, their worst category of teams to play against are these top 25 teams. When they have to move up competition, it is tough for them. Now, we're getting Illinois in what I would define as a massive get-right spot. They just got blown out by, in my opinion, the best team in college basketball, Duke, on a neutral court. They got blown up by Wisconsin. They got shit on by Michigan State. Those are obviously 3 really tough teams. But before that, they beat UCLA, beat Minnesota, beat Ohio State, beat Northwestern, beat Indiana, beat Penn State, beat Washington, beat Oregon, beat Missouri, beat Wisconsin, beat Arkansas. Like, this team can show up to big games. And Iowa is coming off, a decent win at home versus Washington, a borderline not even top 100 team. They lost to Oregon, Oregon on the road. They got blown out by Maryland on the road by 26. They beat Rutgers by 11. They lost to Wisconsin by 11. They lost to Purdue by 9. Ohio State by 17. They barely beat Penn State. Their wins have not impressed me. Yeah, they've been playing decent as of lately, but I think a lot of that's being inflated by these 2 wins over Rutgers and Washington. These are in Penn State. These are teams that they should beat. Meanwhile, Illinois has played 4 top 25 teams in a row, which has really kind of deflated their stock, in my opinion. Iowa is going to be at home, having to travel 200 miles. Illinois back at home in front of their home crowd. I have on good authority that today is going to be an orange out, so everyone in the crowd is going to get an orange t-shirt. So I think it's going to be a big moment for this Illinois team to show up. I think this line was like 11.5. It's dropped all the way to 9.5. I agree. I probably wouldn't have taken it at 11.5, but I think they can easily win this game by 10. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I really think Illinois, this is a primed get right spot for them. In Iowa, first game of a road trip against a pissed off Illinois team after coming off a win against a really bad Washington squad. I think Illinois is going to show up big time here and completely dominate Iowa on both sides of the ball. All right, heading into the final game, we have Gonzaga heading on the road against Santa Clara. So these two teams already played this year. And obviously there is the angle for a revenge spot here for Gonzaga. But I don't fully love this spot for Gonzaga. They're coming off a really awkward sandwich spot. I guess you could argue both teams are, where they were at home, went on the road, at home, not going back on the road. But I think it's a better spot for Santa Clara because they're doing this back and forth, but at least they're going home. They're coming off some really nice wins here against, obviously, some really bad teams, which may be inflating their stock. And obviously Gonzaga has also blown out some pretty bad teams here. But the second Gonzaga had to play a decent competition again in St. Mary's, they lost that game. Sure, they beat San Francisco, but I've believed San Francisco to be frauds all year, and they played that game at home. They lost to St. Mary's twice. They already lost to Santa Clara by 4. They lost to Oregon State. Like, they haven't beat a team in the top 100 on the road. I don't even know if they have all year. So I think this is going to be a struggle for them. Santa Clara has been playing incredibly, incredibly well. This game means more to them for their tournament rankings than it does for Gonzaga. And Gonzaga's season is, in theory, over until the conference tournament. We got Santa Clara. They won 5 of their last 6. Both of these teams have, but Gonzaga's obviously went traveling here. They're going to have to travel over 700 miles for this game, where they have lost their last game in that kind of distance against Santa Clara. The only teams that they beat traveling this far are bad teams, Pacific, Pepperdine. Obviously not bad teams, but not great teams. But yeah, we're getting 6.5 points here. Obviously, when Santa Clara was on the road, they were like massive underdogs, like 15-point underdogs. And you could argue that these teams have not changed that much for Santa Clara's home edge to be losing 9 points. But I don't know. The biggest thing with the Santa Clara team is they show up against big teams. They are the number 1 team in all of college basketball when playing a top 25 team. They really, really step up in these big moments. Gonzaga also steps up, but this is not a number 1 team for Gonzaga. This is a team that I think they're going to play at a worse level. Santa Clara has been playing incredibly well. I think they have, if they can make the tournament somehow, obviously they're in a pretty tough division, but if they can make the tournament, I do like their odds to be a potential black horse and make the Final Four. They just played that much better when confronted with better competition. Now on paper, Santa Clara, I think they're going to shoot a bunch of threes, shoot in the paint. Gonzaga's a decent defensive team, but nothing crazy, not top 25 in anything. I think they're going to be pretty solid on the offensive glass. They're going to get a bunch of shots off. Gonzaga, probably going to have more success offensively on paper. But they are a team that relies really heavily on points off steal. It's something that Santa Clara doesn't really do a lot, doesn't turn the ball over, especially at home. I don't know. I really think this might be a good game. Obviously, Gonzaga's going to eat a lot in the paint. But Santa Clara, they're a pretty good defensive team. They don't foul a lot. I don't think Gonzaga's going to get to the line that much. Yeah, give me Santa Clara here. I think this game means more for them. And I don't think revenge spot. If it was flipped and Santa Clara was heading into Gonzaga, I think it would be a different story. But I think the home crowd shows up here in this West Coast matchup. So give me the Clara to go on the road, stay at home, and have a potential outright win here over Gonzaga. All right, looking at the leans that I like for tomorrow, I haven't decided yet. I might live bet Northwestern. But this team is gritty. Like they did lose a lot of pieces, but they have been really showing up to games. And this Minnesota team, when playing at home, they're just home favorite. They're just so bad, man. They never cover the number as home favorites. They're 1-9-1 against the spread as home favorites. For whatever reason, they can't play in front of their home crowd when they're supposed to win the game. So I might sprinkle Northwestern money line. Lafayette, they're just a team that I hate betting. They suck. Whenever I bet them, they play games way too close to make this kind of number comfortable for me. They play much better from behind than they do with the lead. So maybe I'll live bet them, see if they fall behind early. I can get them on an underdog spot because they do play teams really close. They're really gritty in that way, but once they have a lead, they seem to coast for some reason. So might take Lafayette and VCU. I kind of want to take this number because I think it's going to get slammed. VCU just blows teams out. That's kind of their MO, and I think they're just a way, way, way better team than Richmond. Like if you look at their performance this year, they are borderline like a team that could make it pretty far in the tournament. They're obviously the best team in Atlantic 10. They are elite on both sides of the ball, especially defensively. I don't see a world where Richmond's going to be able to score much. They do play better at home. And I don't know if VCU is going to kind of chill a little bit too much in this game. But yeah, I think VCU wins this game by like 30 points. If they play up to their par, even if they play like 80%, I think they can still cover this number. So all three of these games I may bet. You can see it in my Discord prior to the bets. But for now, I'm only going to bet these other 5 games. So any other totals, anything you want, comment them down below, and I'll be sure to respond to them before the games start.